the story of one of the most feared and violent figures in New York's mafia history, Anthony Gaspipe Casso. Known for his ruthless efficiency, paranoia, and sheer brutality, Casso's reign as an underboss of the Lucchese family left a trail of violence and betrayal that few could rival. Let's explore his life, his rise to power, and the terrifying legacy he left behind. The early years, born into the game. Born in 1940 in Brooklyn, New York, Anthony Salvatore Casso didn't exactly have a typical childhood. In fact, his upbringing was anything but ordinary. He was born into a world of organized crime. His father, Michael Casso, was already a known mobster. So, from the start, Anthony was exposed to the underworld that would shape his life. And let's be honest, when you're a kid in that kind of environment, you either sink or swim. Anthony didn't just swim, he dove right in. He quickly earned a reputation as a tough and fearless enforcer, someone who wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty. But what made him stand out wasn't just his toughness. It was his ability to work quietly, never craving attention, but always getting things done. He didn't need the spotlight. He preferred the shadows, where the real power lay. The nickname that would stick now, you've probably heard the nickname Gaspipe before. But here's the deal. It wasn't just a random name. Casso got that nickname because of his father's weapon of choice, a gas pipe, which was used to carry out hits. It's brutal, it's cold, and it's exactly the kind of weapon that represents Casso's ruthless nature. From early on, Casso showed a knack for the family business. He was crafty, calculating, and knew exactly how to climb the mafia ranks. It wasn't long before his reputation spread beyond his Brooklyn neighborhood. He was a man to be feared, and he used every connection he had to rise through the ranks of the Lucchese crime family. The Lucchese family and Casso's rise to power. In the world of organized crime, few names evoke as much fear and respect as the Lucchese family. One of New York City's infamous five families, the Luccheses ruled the criminal landscape throughout the 20th century. But among them, one name stands out for his ruthless rise to power: Anthony Gaspipe Casso. Casso didn't just make a name for himself in the Lucchese family, he crafted his empire. By the time the 1970s rolled around, Casso had already cemented his reputation as a ruthless and strategic figure. He wasn't just another thug on the streets. This guy was cold-blooded but also brilliant. He knew how to play the game. Casso's rise wasn't the result of luck or random chance. No, he was a man with a plan. And in the world of the mafia, that's what sets you apart. Now let's talk about the guy who gave Casso the keys to the kingdom, Anthony "Tony Ducks" Corallo. Corallo was the boss of the Lucchese family in the 1970s, and he was the guy calling the shots. Under Tony Ducks, Casso was able to climb the ranks with lightning speed. Casso's strategy was simple. Don't just do the job, do it better than anyone else. He was smart, and he was willing to go the extra mile to ensure his rise wasn't just fast, but unstoppable. Casso's rise to power. By the late 1980s, Casso was officially named the underboss of the Lucchese family, one of the most powerful of the five families in New York. This was a huge deal because, as underboss, Casso wasn't just in the background. He was effectively running the day-to-day operations of the family. He worked alongside boss Vittorio Vic Amuso, and together, they were a deadly combination. Picture this: two ruthless men with a shared goal of maintaining total control, and they weren't about to let anyone get in their way. The Mafia Cops connection. Now, here's where things get even more chilling. Casso's power didn't just stretch to his own men, it reached the very heart of law enforcement. In what would become one of the most infamous scandals in mafia history, Casso allegedly struck deals with New York City police officers Louis Ippolito and Stephen Caracappa, two detectives who would later be known as the Mafia Cops. These officers weren't just on the take, they were actively working with Casso. It's said that Casso paid these cops to carry out hits on mobsters. Not just any mobsters, but people in his own family or from rival crews who were seen as threats. These cops even tipped Casso off about investigations, allowing him to stay one step ahead of the law. To say that Casso's influence was far-reaching is an understatement. He had connections in places most people would never imagine, and he used them to his advantage. The downfall of Gaspipe Casso. The downfall of one of the most ruthless mafia figures of all time, Anthony Gaspipe Casso. This guy was untouchable at the peak of his power, but like all mobsters who rise too high, his paranoia and brutality ultimately led to his collapse. Casso went underground, disappearing from the spotlight for 2 whole years. For someone who was used to controlling everything and everyone around him, being forced into hiding was a huge blow to his ego. But, like all fugitives, it was only a matter of time before law enforcement caught up. In 1993, after an intense 2-year manhunt, Gaspipe was finally cornered. When the FBI finally tracked him down, it wasn't some dramatic shootout or standoff. It was the end of a long, slow decline for a man who had once been untouchable. But the truth is, even though Casso was finally captured, his story wasn't over. In fact, the next chapter would reveal just how deep his downfall would go. Cooperation with the government, a dangerous gamble. After his capture, Casso initially agreed to cooperate with the government. In exchange for reduced charges, he was willing to spill the beans on the inner workings of the Lucchese family, the Mafia Cops, and even some of the most notorious hits he'd orchestrated. It seemed like a big break for the government. Gaspipe was finally ready to be a rat, and he could have taken down a whole mafia empire with his information. As he began giving testimony, his story became more and more inconsistent. He lied about key details, even denying his involvement in several murders he was directly responsible for. It was clear that Gaspipe was trying to cover his own tracks and protect himself. He was a man who had lived by deceit for decades, so why would he suddenly start telling the truth now? This, of course, didn't sit well with the authorities. The government had given Casso a chance to save his skin, but his lies destroyed any trust they had in him. Anthony Casso's life behind bars was a reflection of his years on the street. He continued to be a controversial and divisive figure, ultimately dying in 2020 due to complications from COVID-19 while serving a life sentence. Known for his cold-blooded approach and readiness to betray even close allies, Casso left a bloody legacy that few mobsters could rival. His life remains one of the darkest and most chilling chapters in mafia history. And that wraps up our story on Anthony Gaspipe Casso, a man who rose to infamy through ruthless tactics, countless murders, and unrelenting paranoia. Let us know in the comments what you think of this brutal mob boss and who you'd like us to cover next. Thanks for watching. Please like the video, press the subscribe button, and also drop your thoughts in the comment section.